after her shoved her into the bathroom. Like, that's what you would have seen.
If not, erupt out of his desk when she actually made the comment and attacked her at that time. I mean, I don't think that you're going to be able to go into a meticulous thought process of planning what's going to happen in 45 minutes, not even knowing she's going to even go to the bathroom.
Right? Exactly. That's part of it too.
Yeah, he's got to make assumptions that he's not really able to make. Like I said at the beginning, trigger word, it just doesn't add up. Of course, the defense is going to come at the trial with something. I mean, you can't just say he wanted to murder, and you definitely can't say he felt like he needed to murder because his parents got divorced. I mean, the more you say and the more you go on, it makes less and less sense.
Let's forget diagnosis and actual official, but does it sound crazier to sort of harbor a very dark serial killer look on the world and it happens to have appeared younger than average? Or does it sound crazier that a single word can trip this kid over into just totally unpredictable behavior and that all it took was a divorce and maybe he wore the wrong socks that morning and he really hates math besides? Right. But if you try to present him as this, like, confused, hair-trigger, weird kid, then maybe you can
get some sympathy.
I don't blame his lawyers for doing their best and coming up with whatever they could.
They have to come up with something in, all for due process. I mean, he's got to have some kind of defense. And it was a good try. He would have had a much better defense had he slightly cooperated, even in the least.
He would have. He also would have had a better defense if they had focused on that which makes someone incompetent to stand trial. Guarantee he was tested.
I did see a little bit of coverage talking about how the experts who saw him, they felt like he was hamming it up a little bit.
Yeah, that one of the defense experts especially felt like he's faking, like he's malingering.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was more in a faking crazy way. That's not helpful. Like that doesn't help. That hasn't helped any defendant in the history of defense. If you are really trying to get locked up in a psych unit instead of in a prison, if that's what you're trying to do, you gotta fake stupid. Not just stupid like, 3 + 3, because you got to be careful with it. Concept of competency is really complicated. It has to do with a lot of different, like the things you know how to do, math and words, vocabulary, spelling, and memory.
Right, and your ability to understand, not whether you're crazy or not.
While I don't advocate faking in any sort of way, but I do feel like if someone had bothered to point out to him, dude, here's what it means to be not competent to stand trial. It doesn't mean to be crazy. It means to be not able to understand the process of the trial. That we don't care what your psych diagnosis is. We care about how competent and functional you are in the adult world. I think we might have heard a lot more from him if he understood that.
Right. But at 14, it'd be pretty difficult to understand that, in my opinion.
If you're going to fake, you have to fake 24/7 for the whole time.
Same character.
So now in Massachusetts, if you decide to pursue the I'm going to fake crazy route instead of just not guilty, first of all, you're going to be placed in Bridgewater State Hospital, which is our facility that sort of marries a psych hospital and a state prison. Bridgewater is a scary and dark and dangerous place. Bridgewater is where they lock up anybody who commits a crime while they are in a psych hospital. It is a prison within a prison. I have been there. I've toured there a couple of times. You are not going to like it there, shall we say.
Yeah, you're better off just going to regular prison.
And, because then you might have the chance of being in general population and having at least the occasional class and book and not be watched 24/7.
Maybe a movie instead of perhaps chained to something.
Right. And then also in Bridgewater, like you don't stay there forever. If you're found not competent to stand trial, that's where your process ends. But if 5 or 6 or 10 or 26 years later, you are deemed competent to stand trial, you go back to trial and they can find you guilty and they can land you wherever they want to land you.
They get defendants to competency like within 6 months sometimes.
You might think you're getting, first of all, they imagine like being served lemonade by the pond or something.
Right.
Like really
or
fancy,
a nice quiet
place.
Yeah, very quiet, padded room that's got pastels. It's very comforting.
And it might, but most people eat the paint off the walls and you're locked up when you're in that room. And so it's not a nice place. It's not a pretty place. It's not a fun place. And oh, by the way, for all the effort you go through, you're still going to end up going through the other thing eventually anyway. Because if you truly are faking, you will be observed. And eventually, they'll pick up on it. I think that once in a while, rarely, like there are some serial killers or just child murderers or whatever, where you look and you can trace the path. Like, well, if that or this or this hadn't happened, then this kid ends up differently. And so let's get angry, right? Whereas this kid, I feel like, I don't think there's anything I could have done to make him sick. I look at any children that I know, whether they are my own or others, and I think, I don't know, no matter how messed up you are, I don't know what I could do to make you that particular flavor of messed up.
It'd have to be something horrifying.
Even then, then that causes PTSD, which people recognize as visibly crazy, and so people treat you differently. This ability to be that degree of sociopathy where you just have no connection with other human beings. You would have to have been severely, significantly abused for the first 2 or 3 years of your life. You would have been on DCF's radar. We would have heard about it.
And there just wasn't anything like that with him.
Right. Even if the biggest thing that they ever do is the fact that they have already formed this scholarship, I hope that that's enough for them. I hope that they find peace and recognize that part of what's tied into this, and it's hard to say out loud, but there's always a fear of, what did she do wrong? What did she say? Was there a trigger word? Should she have gone to the bathroom differently? Should she have worn a different skirt that day? Should she have been nicer or meaner or whatever? All of these sort of second guessing. And the answer is, if we can't figure out what possibly went wrong in this child's mind, if we can't figure out how to make a child like this, and therefore we can't figure out how to unmake a child like this, then there is nothing that she did wrong, nothing she could have done differently. It wasn't about her.
The fact that it was more random than not is very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, because you feel powerless. You want to be able to say, somebody did something wrong here. And maybe everybody did everything right, and yet shit still hit her fan. Cheery and hopeful stuff, right? That you can do everything right, and yet your fan still ends up shit covered. In my eloquence and wit, right? Whatever. You get the point. You cannot screw up, and yet everything gets screwed up. And normally we think that in terms of maybe a car accident or missing a bill, but this is even bigger. Maybe there were accidents, maybe everything was done right. It doesn't matter. Life went sideways, and what are you going to do? So, I do wish the best for Philip Chism and his family in their different ways. I wish the best for Philip in terms of, I feel like the best thing is to stay extremely closely supervised forever. I don't know that the U.S. has the correct structure right now to supervise him in that way outside of a locked facility. I'm watching Canada really closely because they have let some fairly big names out, and so far they're not seeing a huge recidivism, reoffense rate. So maybe that'll be a big topic of my next episode, is talking about the different ways that the U.S. approaches corrections and punishment and the criminal justice system after the trial. As a spoiler alert, I'm not terribly optimistic. Didn't you feel better before you knew that? Thanks, guys, for tuning in. And thank you so much to Warbaby for all her work on this. I'm so grateful. It was amazing. You have no idea. I was not having a good day. As I've mentioned before, I fell and fractured my wrist and am generally not pleased with myself for that, because could I stop with the medical shit? Jesus Christ. So it was just a bright spot in a tough time, and just thanks. Thank you also to my newest Patreon supporter, Danny. I have had such a great time getting to know you, and the Patreon support is extra, but it's just been so fun to chat, and you know what about. And I am really looking forward to pulling you in on an episode pretty soon, because I think you and we have things to say that other people might want to hear. So that'll be cool. I am still plugging away, guys, at these episodes, and like I just alluded to, this one goes hand in hand with a conversation that I just had with Michelle, who is fantastic and smart and interesting. So hang in there for that one. That's going to come out in the matter of a couple of days. I really try not to stack them on top of each other, so I'm aiming for 2 a week right now, and you have no idea how hard it is to wait on that. But I'm doing my best. And of course, I'm racking them up faster than I can push them out, but whatever. Anyway, the moral is more to come. So until then, stay sane.
Come right in.
I will.
Guys, you are already listening to a fantastic podcast. So why not check out the It's Always Funny in Philadelphia podcast as well, hosted by me, Seamus. Even if you're not a fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the TV show, or you've never even heard of it, you will still enjoy this podcast fully, because It's Always Funny in Philly takes a deep, in-depth look at each and every episode. So tune in on your favorite podcast player today. That's Google Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, CastBox, iTunes, or Apple Podcasts if that's what they're calling it these days. So tune in today. And now, back to your regular scheduled programming.
Jesus Frank! Jesus Frank! Jesus Frank! My life is a lie! My life is a lie!
That's horrible.
That's true.
So strange.
Usually.
I can't imagine what that's like.
Do you want to?
That could never happen to me.
It might.
Lock him away. He's pure evil. Or insane.
Or human. My name's Kate. I have worked as a forensic psychologist, as well as in prisons and as a crisis clinician. My job was to figure out who gets locked up and who gets a key, to find the humanity in inhumane situations. So, are you sure you really want to know?
Yeah? Maybe.
Because by the end of the episodes, you just might end up thinking...
I felt better before I knew that.
You can find me at IWB Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, sometimes Instagram, or you can email me at iwbpodcast@gmail.com. We're not trying to change anybody's mind. We're just trying to understand it.
At We Too, we aim to explore gender differences in our current world. We want to hear stories, differing opinions, new ideas. We want to hear what you have to say, because you have a voice, and guess what? It
Look for We Too Podcast, WETOO Podcast, on social media and on your favorite podcatchers.